But let's talk about your effort to become the next mayor of New York City. Give us a sense, if you could, as to your platform and what it is you hope that your leadership would be able to bring to all of us who live in this great city.
It is simply too expensive. And
Facts.
we are not getting back the quality that we deserve.
Mm.
And, I'm a Bronx kid, I'm a New York kid through and through. And no matter where you're at, whether if you're, in central Brooklyn or southeast Queens or South Bronx, if you're in El Barrio or North Shore, everyone is figuring out the same pieces right now. How do you have more money in your pocket? How do you keep more money in your pocket? How do we pay for affordable housing because it's not affordable? And what are we doing to have public safety and public service the way we need? And so I'm running very clearly on the vision that we deserve better.
Mm.
And around the premise of tomorrow begins today, that I don't want us to be in a space where we're continuing to look at a mayor who clearly is only trying to kiss up to Donald Trump and actually not
Mm.
help people,
Mm.
as opposed to how do we change the game? And so, very concretely, we want to end credit scores for rent and homeownership applications. Uh,
Oh.
I, I think that would substantially change the game and make things much fairer for many people. We don't have a good reason why credit scores have to be utilized. It's a new premise from 1989. There's plenty of ways for us to understand that someone can pay their rent, pay their mortgage on time. We can see that very clearly. I do believe that students should have civic, financial literacy, and mental health before they graduate,
Mm.
so that you create that new global citizenry. We do believe that we have to help people actually make more money and have higher wages. So for the companies that are contracting with the city, there needs to be an expectation that they're going to pay people higher that work in the city.
Right.
And then we need a local median income, because area median income is not working. It doesn't make any sense that you have Westchester County and other places a part of this. So we want to change the game in a very practical way. And I tell people, you do not have to go back to a Cuomo. You can have a new vision of leadership in Michael Blake.
Mm. And so when we're thinking about not only the economy of New York City, again, y'all, I know this is a national show, but what's happening in New York City really exemplifies what's happening all across the country. Reverend Blake, we have had a situation where you mentioned the current mayor and his efforts to, ingratiate himself even further to Donald Trump. And one of the things that has troubled me about this is that oftentimes as voters, we have a difficult time holding elected officials accountable when they come from our communities. And that sort of stymies and stifles the conversation about what we should have, what we should fight for. As you think about what New York City looks like today, in addition to the policy platforms that you just referenced, what is it that voters should be demanding of elected officials? We often give a pass, or we'll say, oh, they're not going to do this anyway, they're not going to do that anyway. What would you like to see in terms of an engaged electorate so that the electorate is more capable of advocating as it pertains to their relationship with elected officials, so that the things that you promised today, we would be, as voters, able to come back a year from now and say, remember you said this, here's how we hold you accountable? What does a more healthy relationship between voters and elected officials look like when you're looking at the world in a Project 2025 America?
Well, it's part of the reason why I launched Project 2026, because I want us to have a vision that is better than what the Republicans are giving. And I think you're being way too kind to Eric Adams talking about he ingratiated himself. Donald Trump directly said that Eric came to DC to thank him for the charges being dropped. So let's
I
be
will
clear
say
about
this is
that.
the first time I have been accused of being too kind and Eric.
Yeah, I'm just saying. You said ingratiate. I mean, come on, let's not sugarcoat it right now.
Listen, say that.
I'm just
Say
saying, man, the man wasn't trying to help people; he was trying to help himself. And
that.
so, to that degree, I think folks are looking to trust government again. And I always try to remind people that as much as you say you don't like politics and you don't care about politics, that's actually not true.
Hmm.
Because the moment you're born to the moment you get called on home, there's nothing that's happened in your life that's not impacted by a policy.
Right.
And too often we've allowed the conversation to be separate. It was like, well, I don't like politics, but you care about your taxes. Well, I don't like politics, but you care about your schools. I don't like politics, but you want a better hospital. I don't care about politics, but I want public safety. So help me to understand. Politics leads to you electing the people that are going to do these things.
Hmm.
And so for those of us who are doing it for the right reasons. As a son of Jamaican immigrants, which I say to folks, we have to expand immigration conversation. It's not just Latino, it's Caribbean, it's African, it's Asian, it's all of us intertwined. And stop letting MAGA Republicans hold us back on that. As a son of a union family, as a son of a manufacturing woman who, raised 4 boys. We understand this journey right now
Mm.
that I want to show people that you can have better, and very specifically around the policies.
Mm.
And I want to be very clear about this. It doesn't matter where you're listening today. You care about New York City, because when New York City is moving, it impacts the world.
Right.
You know, when Trump is doing his foolish tariffs and stocks are being impacted on Wall Street, when folks are wondering about what happened around the absolute pain of 9/11, when you're seeing what happened around Superstorm, saying people understand things change here. And so for that degree, everyone should be focused and paying attention here. And so when you're like, okay, Michael Blake, I'm hearing about you. Why you for mayor in this moment? I'm the only candidate in the race who's been a part of a team that has actually defeated Donald Trump when I was vice chair of the Democratic National Committee.
Mm.
I'm the only person in the race who has White House, State House, and local experience, which we desperately need in this moment. I'm the only one in this race who can show you the most detailed education plan, specifically around My Brother's Keeper and around civics, financial literacy, mental health. How do you actually help kids to graduate from school and address what's going on with student loans? But I also think just very fundamentally, we have to be very direct with folks on how do we help people pay their bills and keep more money in their pocket. And that's why I go back to local median income instead of area median income. That's why I go back to ending credit scores for rent home ownership applications. Because if you take those steps, as well as paying our nonprofits faster and on time, as well as paying our businesses faster and on time, that's how you change the game for people. And you all can learn about this at blakefanYC.com itself, because I want to show people no matter where you live, you can have better here in New York City.
Let's talk about your education program. In New York City, we have what's called mayoral control, and that is essentially a form of controlling the education system. It may be very unfamiliar to other people, where the mayor has what many have called an outsized influence on the policies of education in this city. And that's something that various community groups have been fighting against for some time. There's not necessarily alignment or agreement there, but you mentioned specifically an education platform that is built on the successes of My Brother's Keeper. My audience knows I'm very partial to My Brother's Keeper. Talk to us about what that education plan would look like.
It's
Oh,
a
you're
plan.
there you go.
No, I was like, it's a plan where we're actually helping kids to learn and not be just test takers.
Mm.
It's a plan where we focus on the pedagogy of literacy up front, because if we're addressing third grade literacy, then you're leading into a crisis throughout. It's a plan that appreciates how parents and principals and educators and the entire system have to be a part of education, not just the teacher.
Right.
It's a plan that's focused on how do we have childcare from 3 to 6 p.m. at a minimum, but also childcare on the weekends so that you have comprehensive opportunities to utilize schools as the centers that they should be.
Wow.
It's a vision that is intentional around having more specialized high schools that are not just contingent on did you pass one exam. It's an education vision that understands that ICE should not be in our schools, nor our places of worship, nor our community centers. It's an education vision, which is very intentional, that we had Schoolhouse Rock back in the day. Let's make it a point that these kids can understand civics so that they can be the global citizens that they need to be, as well as financial literacy so they understand the language of money. Because if you help a kid have a book in their book bag, they're probably not being arrested for a dime bag, and they're probably not putting a gun in their bag.
Mm.
And so if we take these steps here, we can shift the narrative quickly in a very impactful way.
Yeah.
And so I was that kid at PS 79 that was in the book Savage Inequalities, Children in American Schools by Jonathan Colesville.
Excellent.
I'm that kid that had a chance to go work for President Obama on both campaigns in the White House. When we launched the My Brother's Keeper Alliance in the Bronx, we did that as a national launch to send the message of how you're changing the narrative. And people may not remember that My Brother's Keeper was created after Trayvon Martin was taken from us.
Right.
And as we think about how we just lost a 16-year-old young girl because of a stray bullet, it's another reminder
Mm.
that we have to shift what's happening with education. And that means we got to pay our teachers more. It means we got to pay our principals and assistant principals more. It means we have to make more intentional approaches on how do we make sure families are part of the process. And then again, I think fundamentally and specifically, literacy and language being paramount in terms of the strategies up front.
Mm.
You take those kinds of steps, you'll make it easier for more kids to go to school and graduate from school and have better lives.
You've mentioned a median area median income as compared to local median income, and that is a huge issue because housing voucher availability depends on the median income. When I was a part of the New York City Racial Justice Commission, one of the three ballot proposals that we introduced and successfully got passed into law was a true measurement of the cost of living in New York City. Should you be successful in this effort, you will be coming into office in 2026 at a time when the federal budget will look like it has been decimated as it pertains to the amount of funds going from the federal level to the state level, which means that the money that the city gets would also be significantly decimated. We are in a time right now where the one agency that continues to expand its budget is NYPD. Every single budget, the NYPD is expanded. Talk to us about how you would balance the budget and how you would fund the institutions that are going to need to be funded in a 2026 reality when the budget that you would be dealing with as it pertains to the money you would receive from the state vis-a-vis the feds would be lessened, and we'll be in an era where there will be police immunity, full police immunity, if the Department of Justice continues to have its way with the courts. What does balancing the budget look like at a time where the only agency traditionally that has grown to the extent that it has been the NYPD?
One of the reasons why I think you need to have a Black person in this seat in this moment. And sometimes people may think, well, race is not everything, but I'm going to explain why. Typically, when budgets are cut, it's Black and brown people who get hurt the most.
Mm.
And there's a necessity that we do not lose our focus on equity, because equity is actually getting us to where we need to be and beyond proportionally.
Mm.
Because of all the cuts that are then coming. It's unfortunate regularly that when we hear public, that is the entity that is actually getting the least, except when it comes to NYPD.
Right.
So public schools and public hospitals and public transportation, all these things. But however, NYPD, $1.4 billion in overtime last year, not around increasing public safety, but specifically around promotions. And an illegal sex ring that was going down. I mean, that's literally what was happening. That's how people learned about that there. And so to your question, first, you need someone who has managed large budgets and large teams, which I have done consistently over my years through my Small Business Atlas Strategy Group, through our democracy effort at Kairos Democracy Project, to be able to look internally within the budget and see the excessive spending that is happening, not just at NYPD, but other agencies, and be intentional of how we make sure that we are not hurting Black and brown and outer borough communities in the midst of those changes. Second, you got to be able to generate new revenue. And we can do that through a vacant apartment and commercial tax. So for those that are not living in New York as a primary residence, tax that individual. For the landlord who has a commercial property that they're warehousing and they're not utilizing it, tax that individual. Let's get $400 to $500 million from that. Let's reclaim unclaimed fines and fees, which is about $2 billion. Overwhelmingly, that's in parking tickets. Let's be very intentional around what are we doing to address public safety in the dynamic of mental health, right, by having 1,000 mental health professionals out instead of 1,000 National Guards members. Because if you have more mental health professionals that are out, and you're able to reduce the strain that is happening in our subways as well as small businesses, more people feel more comfortable to go out to our community, and you'll have more small businesses that will come back as well. That is how you can actually generate the revenue without hurting people in the midst of the cuts that are coming from DC. Right. And the reason I understand that well is because I've worked in DC. And I do believe that it's that moment right now where people need to hear and see you have a candidate in Michael Blake who actually understands how DC, the state, would work to help us in the city.
Now, you mentioned, and I know you got to go, so I want to try to squeeze this in before our time comes to an end. You had mentioned that it's one of the reasons why it's important to have someone Black and from our communities in this position. We have someone Black in that position right now, technically from our communities. What is the disconnect between his approach to governance, which has been one, because he cut our, Mayor Adams cut our education budgets, cut the library budgets, cut the mental health budget, cut the public transportation, cut all the budgets and increased the budget for NYPD. Why is his Blackness not sufficient to avoid this particular sort of harm inflicted against the people who put him in office?
Well, first, he lives in New Jersey. So, I mean, that would probably be a main reason why it would be a challenge to prioritize what's happening here. Second, when you have made it a point, as he has, that placating, kissing up to a pseudo dictator was more important than actually helping the people. Third, Eric Adams was a registered Republican under the Giuliani days,
Mm.
uh, and served in as an officer in that point. So like I'm not confused in him. And so as we know from the term, not all skin folk are kinfolk. And so I come to you in this moment right here to say, no matter where you're listening,
Mm.
whether you're in New York City or nationally, you care about what's happening in New York City. And you need to have someone who actually has a plan to make the city better, has a plan on how to pay for it, and has a plan for us to not lose who we are. And that is me.
Mm.
And so if you are excited about anything that I have said, again, my name is Michael Blake. I'm a former assembly member, former vice chair. I've served at every level of government. Son of Jamaican immigrants. Yes, a child of God, as was said earlier as well. And I'm coming to you to demonstrate that we can have better. We can have better on public safety. Well, there's also criminal justice accountability. We can have public transportation that is better and is on time. We can have better public education. We can have better public hospitals and what's going on, especially the fears around Medicaid and Medicare. We can actually protect your pensions and your benefits so you're not being hurt because you work too hard to lose that. And we can be clear that we will not tolerate anti-Blackness and anti-Latino and anti-Semitic rhetoric and anti-Islamophobia. We're not going to allow that to be if you give me the chance to lead.
Mm.
And if you want to learn more about what we're doing, join us at BlakeForNYC.com. That's our website, BlakeForNYC.com. Or follow me on social media. I'm at MR Mike Blake or at Blake for NYC. You'll be able to see us there so that we can change the game for New York City.